We begin in the Middle East. Over the weekend, U.S. President Joe Biden proposed a three-phase ceasefire deal between Israel and Hamas. The first phase includes a complete ceasefire in Gaza and the release of some Israeli hostages that are still being held by Hamas. The initial stage also includes a withdrawal of Israeli forces from populated areas in Gaza. And the second phase includes a permanent end to hostilities and the return of all living Israeli hostages, which would be followed by a complete Israeli withdrawal. The final phase caters to the reconstruction of Gaza and the return of the remains of Israeli hostages to their families. Now, Qatar and Egypt have urged both Israel and Hamas to accept the deal proposed by President Biden. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's office has tentatively accepted President Biden's proposal, but called it a, quote, not so good plan, end quote. However, Netanyahu stresses that there would be no ceasefire in Gaza until Hamas was militarily defeated. Now, backing Netanyahu was Defense Minister Yoav Gallant, who said Israel wants an alternative to Hamas in Gaza.
In parallel to this important military operation, the security establishment under my instructions is preparing the governing alternative to Hamas. While we will isolate areas, remove Hamas operatives from the areas and introduce other forces that will enable an alternative government that will also threaten Hamas.
Now, Netanyahu's mixed signals has Washington worried that Israel will, in fact, not stick to the ceasefire proposal and continue its war against Hamas. Meanwhile, far-right ministers and Netanyahu's government have threatened to quit and dissolve the parliament if President Biden's proposal is accepted. Israel's finance and national security ministers say the deal is a, quote, victory for terrorism, end quote. Meanwhile, Netanyahu is getting support from his political opponents, urging the Israeli prime minister to, in fact, take the deal. Even families of the Israeli hostages have urged Netanyahu to accept the deal and secure the return of their loved ones.
I'm here to support my government in taking this deal, the deal that Netanyahu suggested, our prime minister, that will get all our people back home. We are all here in support for the return of all hostages.
Hamas officials have said they will, in fact, accept President Biden's deal only if Israel accepts it first. Meanwhile, President Biden said the onus is now on Hamas and they should, in fact, take the deal.
This is truly a decisive moment. Israel has made their proposal. Hamas says it wants a ceasefire. This deal is an opportunity to prove whether they really mean it. Hamas needs to take the deal.
Meanwhile, fighting continues in Gaza as Israel conducts more airstrikes in the war-torn area. The war that began in October of last year has its first chance at peace, but only if Israel accepts President Biden's proposal. And now, all eyes are on Netanyahu. From impeachments to inaugurations, if it's a political story, we are on the scene. The race for the White House is heating up.
We're beating Biden.
How dare he say that?
If it's breaking news, we're live with the latest coverage. From the White House, the State Department, and Capitol Hill, we know the issues, but above all, we know the players to bring you the latest in-depth analysis on all the key stories that we're covering. I'm Eric Ham. Join me from Washington here on Firstpost America.
Confused by the barrage of numbers, deafened by the chorus of experts, disoriented by the flying graphics? Don't worry, we've got you covered. On Firstpost, we're keeping things simple. The most important seats, the high-profile candidates, and the most lucid analysis. As India counts its votes, tune in to Firstpost. Catch our live coverage on June 4th on all our platforms. Also, the special edition of Vantage.